Good morning, afternoon or evening, and welcome back to my channel. For those who have returned, it's lovely to see you, hypothetically, and for those who are new here, I talk about a range of property related matters in the UK, so if that's what you're here for, definitely consider subscribing to keep up to date with my new videos. We've just hit 300 subscribers, another huge milestone has been reached, so a massive thank you to everyone who has subscribed, and the next stop is of course 500 subscribers. Yay! Today I want to talk about the different types of residential property you might come across in the UK. This might help clear up any terminology that you're unsure of and help you understand what types of property are available. So grab some hobnobs and let's dive straight into it because it's about to get real. Estate. Detached house. This is a property that is freestanding and not attached to any other property that is owned by someone else. These properties are usually large and sit on a reasonably sized plot of land and are probably the most desired type of property in the UK, meaning they're also quite expensive. Since they're detached, you wouldn't ever have the noisy neighbour problem, and if you ever wanted to do works on your property, you wouldn't ever need something called a party wall agreement. One big downside though is that they can be less thermally efficient because all the walls around are exposed to the elements, and that also generally means more maintenance. Link detached. This type of property is very similar to a detached house whereby they share no common walls with another property, but are joined or linked by the garage that is typically at the side of the house. Again, these properties are very in demand and can be quite expensive. The same pros apply here with the exception of the party wall. If you wanted to knock down or alter the garage, you would likely need a party wall agreement with the neighbour whose garage you're joined with. Semi-detached house. This type of property shares one common wall with a neighbour known as the party wall. That neighbour is usually a mirror image, and both properties will have an exposed side wall known as a flank wall. Semi-detached properties are in high demand as well, but are usually less expensive than detached or linked detached houses. Most semi-detached properties will have a standard layout of 3 bedrooms and a bathroom upstairs, and 2 reception rooms and a kitchen downstairs. Semi-detached properties can also be more thermally efficient than detached houses, A, because they're normally smaller, and B, because they have a whole house right next door, blocking heat from escaping from one side. However, because one wall is typically shared, you can have the noisy neighbour problem. And if you ever wanted to do works on that shared party wall, like knock out a chimney breast for example, you'll likely need a party wall agreement. End of terrace. This property is usually situated at the end of a terrace or row of houses, all linked to one another. An end of terrace house will share only one common wall with a property, just like a semi-detached house, but the difference is the house next to it will be linked by another house and so forth, which creates the row. End of terrace properties can often be confused with semi-detached houses because they have an almost identical setup and only share one common wall. Usually they are less expensive than semi-detached houses, but are more desirable than a mid-terrace house because they'll often have a slightly wider plot because of the side passage, meaning a potentially bigger garden, although that's not always the case. The same pros and cons will apply to this property as a semi-detached house. A mid-terrace house. This is almost identical to an end of terrace, but rather being that at the end, where you have one side exposed, you're right in the middle and share 2 common walls either side of the property. These types of houses can be quite small and often don't have a driveway, but rather a small front garden. A huge benefit though is the thermal efficiency because the only external walls are the front and back, and you have 2 houses either side of you that can help retain heat. However, the noisy neighbour problem can be doubled, and the same applies for party wall agreements if you ever wanted to do any major works, which can get costly. Bungalow. This is a property that only has 1 story, the ground floor. They'll probably have some loft space, but it's normally just storage and not actual livable space. Bungalows were originally designed with a view to help elderly and disabled people maneuver around their home without the need for stairs. Unfortunately, there are less and less real bungalows around the UK because a lot of people have bought and extended into the loft to create extra rooms. This has really decreased the pool of bungalows available, and now they're starting to get really expensive. This is also partnered with the cost of the build versus profit, which means that kind of new bungalows aren't really being built because it's not commercially viable. The term often used to describe a bungalow that's been extended into a first floor is called a chalet bungalow. Flat or apartment. This is a residential unit within a building that has 2 or more individual units. If a building only has 2 units, the other one can be a commercial one, like for example where there is a ground floor shop and a flat above it. There are many types of flats in the UK, but the main distinguishable features of a flat are multiple dwellings in one building, and there is often some sort of communal space like corridors, hallways or entrances. Most flats in the UK are leasehold and are a great way to get on the property ladder as they are relatively cheaper than houses. Leasehold properties often have other costs like ground rent and service charge as well, which can be expensive. Check out my video on freehold versus leasehold property for more information on that. The different types of flats include a standard flat or apartment within a block, a period conversion, which was a house built within a certain period of time, usually Georgian, Victorian or Edwardian, and then converted into flats at a later date. A conversion flat, which is the same thing as a period conversion, but built from a house after the notable eras, so anything around after 1910. Maisonette. This is also a form of flat, but it was purposely built to have its own entrance as part of a multi-unit building. The same rules usually apply as with flats, but you'll have your own entrance and it's very unlikely you'll have any communal space with the other maisonettes. Sometimes conversion flats get mixed up with maisonettes because they may have their own entrance, but as they weren't purposely built to be a flat but rather converted from a house, they can't actually be called maisonettes. There is also a term called a split level maisonette, which means it's split over 2 or 3 floors and it can actually feel more like a house. Maisonettes can sometimes be more desirable than flats because there is little to no communal space, making it cheaper to maintain. Other typical benefits could include private gardens and driveways, but this can also be the case with conversion flats. There are other types of conversions as well, such as industrial conversions, barn conversions, coach houses, garage conversions, etc., which I won't get into too much detail because they weren't originally built as a residential property and have just been changed. You could probably think of anything that I haven't mentioned, add the word conversion to the end, and it will probably be a thing. Also, these terms can be mixed and matched. For example, you can have a period conversion in an end terrace building, or a semi-detached chalet bungalow, or a conversion flat in a detached building, so just a heads up when you are reading property descriptions. And there we have it. These are the most common types of residential UK property. Now you know what they are, you'll be able to distinguish between the different types of buildings. One day I'll probably go through some ways in which you can distinguish between the types of flats and the periods the buildings were built. If you found this useful, informative, leave me a little tiny like on the video and definitely subscribe if you want to learn more about UK property. Thank you so much for watching and I'll see you all at my next video.